my kittens. This is Our Cat's Gay. After many interesting conversations on the Gaytriarchy podcast, I've been wondering if GGTOW, gays going their own way, is a form of identity politics. You see, we spend a lot of time on this side of YouTube disparaging identity politics, so I decided a deeper look at the question was warranted. Simply put, no, it's not. But I understand how someone might think it was. The reason why is a little complicated, and that's at the core of what we need to talk about to answer my question. I think the confusion over identity politics comes from a larger problem, especially on the internet, of contradictory, intermingled definitions that are dependent on whether the given word is being used broadly or narrowly. Racism is a very prominent example. The right uses the word racism narrowly to mean prejudice based on race, whereas the left uses it broadly to mean prejudice plus institutional power, routinely going beyond even that already expansive definition into the interstitial spaces of the unconscious bias and microaggressions. This intellectual divergence creates a definitional tug-of-war to determine who can pull the public to their side, thus deciding which side is using the word correctly, i.e., which one is the real definition. This isn't done because there aren't enough words to accurately describe what someone means. English is my 600-pound life of languages, even if most of its speakers are either anorexic or bulimic, but rather because people with weaker arguments prefer to use a cuckoo bird approach. Rather than put forward a new and descriptive term or argument, they try to change one already in wide use to suit their position and claim victory, not unlike the cuckoo who covertly lay their eggs in other birds' nests so that the larger, more domineering cuckoo chicks can literally push the original baby birds out of their own nests. If we don't defend the fundamental integrity of language and basic concepts, meaningful communication and thought will become impossible as we become forced to leapfrog from definition to definition before we can even begin to talk about something. Kind of like this video. Shit. It's already happening. I try to use narrow definitions of words and expand only as needed because I find it more effective to communicate exactly what I'm trying to say as opposed to plucking broad concepts out of the figurative sky and trying to pigeon them into holes. That doesn't sound right either, does it? So when I refer to identity politics, and I suspect most people, are often using it as a pejorative for sectarianism, which is an excessive attachment to a particular sect or party, especially in a religious or racial context. Black Lives Matter comes to mind as a very prominent example because they are at the current face of one group endlessly denouncing another to advance their own. A more charitable interpretation of identity politics would be advocating of the issues related to a specific race. This is not a bad thing in of itself, because I do not believe you can actually affect specific outcomes without being clear who they are for, i.e., you cannot even begin to solve the South African farmer's dilemma until you are clear exactly who you are talking about and what their specific issues are. In this more narrow context, you could make a credible argument for GGTOW being a kind of identity politic because it is specifically about and for homosexual biological men. But don't get too excited yet. Yes, GGTOW is a group, identity specific, but we are not sectarians. We are individualists. You see, the problem with typical identity sectarian tactics is that they are often counter-effective, often fostering needless animosity by creating divisions along often arbitrary lines, i.e., not everything is about race unless you make it about race. A typical aspect of identitarians is a kind of revelry in that identity as a way of both highlighting said group and as a justification for why we have to do something. Think about Black Power or Pride movements. That isn't GGTOW. GGTOW isn't trying to stoke the flames of gay nationalism, but to pull our brothers out of the fire. We exist. Period. There is life outside the rainbow. Period. These are not identitarian viewpoints, but they are facts that are often suppressed by rainbow orthodoxy. The LGBT elites do not want you to know that there are perfectly reasonable, normal gay men who reject the ever-sharpening political knives of LGBT activism. So back to our original question. Is GGTOW a form of identity politics? Well, after establishing that when I say identity politics, I'm talking about sectarianism, No, GGTOW is not about asserting the victimhood of gay men, but the rejection of the victim identity activists have put forward based on group membership in the forever expanding alphabet soup
LGBTIQ++ lambda omega umlaut 7 Charlie blue chocolate chip Pikachu. Would you like fries with that? No, I'm gluten intolerant. Potatoes aren't wheat. All grains batter resistant Cheeto. Muslims can't be homophobic. You Islamophobe. The future is female. Some women have penises. Kill all the white men who won't have sex with me.
community. GGTOW is a community of men united by the act of going our own way and leaving the rainbow to forge our own lives. It is the personal as personal, telling the politicals to leave us alone and have their hashtag party somewhere else. Is that splitting hairs? Perhaps, but distinctions are important when they illuminate differences. And likewise, things that share similarities are not inherently related. A Tesla X and a golf car are both electric vehicles, but you wouldn't take a Model X on the putting green, although having just pictured that, it sounds immeasurably more fun than actual golf. The difference between GGTOW and trans activists or other political identitarians is inward versus outward focus. GGTOW rejects outside interests and say, you do you, but we will be over here, not unlike telling the bouncer at a club that you aren't with the crazy person who tagged along with you and your friends and started screaming at everyone about insane bullshit. Intersectional transgender identitarians are likewise outward focused. Like the board, all must be assimilated and implanted with wokenetic implants so that they know how the new drones fit into the ever-shifting victim hierarchy. GGTOW isn't about controlling others. In fact, it's about rejecting outside control in favor of self-determination. GGTOW is not identitarian, it is libertarian. Little L. Calm down. If this has all been rather circular, I apologize. There is always some overlap between ideas, and unfortunately, it seems that we have to spend more and more time just explaining what we mean, and when we say anything because of dumb people on social media who reject dictionaries and use words like Maxine Waters uses common decency. It feels increasingly difficult these days for me to talk about anything relating to these issues, not just because of knee-jerk PC reactionaries, but because the waters are being intentionally muddied. The fact that I have to spend 5 minutes explaining the background of an idea, or explain what a thing even is before I can even address whether or not people have heard about it and are talking about it, often leaves me, and many others I suspect, with an overwhelming sense of futility and exhaustion, and that is exactly why we have to push forward. We cannot allow bad actors and idiots to poison the great well of language and cede control of certain topics because of entropy and frustration. The reason Jordan Peterson has been especially successful in the
Intellectual dark web
and otherwise unassailable by the toxic soup people is because he spends so much time and so much care defining what he means when he says it. The greatest trick that the current activists have is a fustification, which they achieve by hijacking existent words or by making broad assumptions about a person based on their word choices. If you use the intersectional vocabulary and concepts to communicate your point, you will always be at a disadvantage because these people do not care about consistency. Whenever having a discussion, you must be clear what you mean, and when you say something, that when they attempt to sidetrack or derail you with the inevitable list of ists and phobias, you can, like Jordan Peterson slaying the
So you're saying
Kathy Newman dragon, respond confidently,
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. As I said before.
be firm in this. Do not allow your opponent to redefine your own terminology. If they, for instance, insist that racism is
power plus privilege.
which is thoroughly and wonderfully debunked in this PSA Sitch video included below, you can say,
As I said before, that isn't what I'm talking about.
in the same way that they will attempt to cuckoo you with their terminology, you can proceed confidently because you know which baby birds are yours. If all of this isn't clear, I will say again, GGTOW is not identity politics because GGTOW is an action, not a highly specific political philosophy per se. For instance, all gay men share a common attraction to men and tend to act on that attraction in a fairly similar way. However, they do not do this because they have gathered together for the purpose of having sex with men. That's not an ideological movement, that's a bathhouse. GGTOWs are related in that we are all gay biological men and that we have already or are in the process of leaving the LGBT political sphere. and reject outside authority about those matters, i.e., I don't care who you are or why you think I have to listen to you. I'm figuring things out for myself. That's it for now. Thank you so much to my incredible subscribers. When I started this channel a little over a year ago, I really can't believe it's been that long already. I had maybe a dozen subs, and today we have nearly 600. What's more, we have found a community here. Prince of Queens, Saint of Bacon, Spacepan, Feral Cat, Panta Ray, and now GGTOW Bersrker, our friend from Sweden, who I recommend you all check out in the link in the description. We are not alone, and you all helped us get here. Thank you. This has been Our Cat's Gay. Hit the bell so YouTube doesn't hide me from you. Like, subscribe, love it, hate it. You already watched it. You can't unwatch it. Thank you for watching.